Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Clarity. I'm your host, Grant Koehnen, and today we have a Martin County attorney, Taylor McGowan, with us. Our focus for today's episode is on youth safety and substance abuse prevention, specifically talking about the Martin County's Social Host Ordinance. So grab your favorite coffee, sit back, maybe snack a little, and let's dive into this important conversation. So first, I'd have you introduce yourself.
So I'm Taylor McGowan. I'm the Martin County attorney. I've been county attorney since August of 2022. I started with the office back in September of 2020. I have been practicing law actually since 2012 when I graduated from law school. So I'm a little bit older than I appear. But as county attorney, I wear a couple different hats. The main job that I perform is I am the chief prosecutor for Martin County, as well as all the cities. So that means that petty misdemeanors through felonies come to my office. We prosecute those, get them charged out, work the cases through to trial if need be. And that's probably the bulk of what we do. My office also handles child protection matters, which luckily I have an assistant who handles all of that stuff. And we also handle juvenile prosecutions, which are a little bit different than adult prosecutions.
Could you go more into that, what that means?
So, the thing with juvenile prosecutions, or what are called juvenile delinquency matters, is it's kind of a system where, the same criminal laws apply, the same type of charging documents apply. You can be cited, or you can receive a juvenile petition instead of a criminal complaint. But the court system works a little bit differently. It has its own rules. There's kind of different penalties that might apply. Obviously, with a lot of crimes, one of the things that we do is we put people away for a while. We're not often trying to do that with juveniles. It's more rehabilitative. What programming can we offer? Kind of how can we get juvenile offenders on the right track and make sure that they don't repeat?
That sounds like a great philosophy, especially with juvenile teens and stuff like that. So what inspired you to get into this line of work?
I've always been kind of public service oriented. I just kind of fascinated with doing government work. Government work offers a lot of variety, and you have generally one client, which is the people, or whatever community you work for, and that's something that's kind of nice to have. I don't want to malign other lawyers, but the legal profession, you're kind of an intellectual mercenary, right? Someone gives you money, you argue on their behalf. As a government attorney, you get to kind of argue on behalf of the public good, and I like doing that. And the types of issues that come up are types of issues that you see in the news all the time, especially with criminal justice stuff. I mean, everyone is talking about, some type of criminal case that hits the news, whether it be a officer-involved shooting or a theft or something like that. It's something that we're all very aware of. Everyone has an opinion on. And it's something that really, I think, affects our day-to-day lives. So it's nice to be able to work in those areas, and just how it, the practical, or the practicalities, the realities of it, is kind of fun to deal with too. I mean, the work that we have, real implications. What I do is an extension of what law enforcement does. We're trying to keep communities safe. We're trying to, again, in the case of juveniles, rehabilitate them so we can, so those juvenile delinquents don't turn into career criminals. And it's nice to feel that you do some good, after a long day of work.
Yeah, and definitely we need a lot more good in this world for sure, like things like that. And it's awesome to hear the whole process and system, how it just all strings together. And you said something about we hear all this stuff on the news all the time, these big cases that go over, and I'm not sure exactly how publicized this is. So could you please explain our social host ordinance and what does it apply to? The events, who does it affect specifically?
Well, it primarily affects anyone who decides to furnish alcohol to a minor, or basically permit them to use alcohol knowingly. This ordinance was passed back in December of 2018, and sort of expanded upon what was already available under state law. And the idea is to basically disincentivize people from either furnishing alcohol to minors at their abode, or to knowingly permit minors to use alcohol at their residence. So it applies to basically really anybody. Primarily, it's going to be something where it applies to people who have gatherings at their houses, and it's like I said, it's meant to just sort of provide a little kick to say, don't do this, because if you get caught, there is a sanction. It's a misdemeanor under our county ordinance laws.
Yeah, so it's a misdemeanor for the people giving the substances for the
yes, or
minors.
permitting, yes.
Okay, and does that include their parents, or is it just someone else's?
So it would include, yes. Oftentimes, who you're really trying to get to is not the the 18-year-old who gives the 16-year-old a beer. Generally, the person you're trying to get to is the parents who provided the alcohol or allowed it to be there in the first place. So that's who it may affect, and that's who really we're trying to get to, because ultimately, we have a whole other host of laws to prevent people under 21 to walk into a service station or a bar and get alcohol. So we kind of got that covered. The difficulty comes is if you got a parent who, is allowing their kid and their kid's friends to get into the alcohol cabinet, or sometimes knowingly, saying, hey, we have a social gathering, we'll let the 17, 18-year-olds have a beer or something like that. It's not, and I'll have to double check the text of our ordinance, but under state law, there is an exception for if you are having like a family dinner and your parents bust out a bottle of wine and share it with you. The law isn't intended to prosecute that. Like, we're not, that's exempted. This is more of if you have, social gatherings that go beyond your family, and you've got people under the age of 21 getting into alcohol, being furnished alcohol, that's what we're trying to, disincentivize.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard of several different stories where the parents, they help these kids throw these massive parties, and they buy the substances and alcohol for them. And I love that we have something where we can finally put that to an end, or at least try to.
Yeah, and I can just kind of, to give you a sense of what the ordinance covers, the language in the ordinance is that it is unlawful for any person to host or allow an event or gathering where alcohol or alcoholic beverages are present when an underage person consumes any alcohol or alcoholic beverage, and that person fails to take reasonable steps to prevent consumption by the underage person. So this is a little bit broader than state law in that, Grant, let's say that you show up at a buddy's house and you got a couple beers in your back pocket and decide to pop those open and drink them, and your buddy's friends know about it. Now, did they supply you with the alcohol? No. Did they tell you to bring it? No. But if they know that you have it, they see you drinking, and they allow it, they'd still be in violation of our local ordinance.
That really brings a different perspective and a different standard that you're setting. Is you're really trying to hammer down on, hey, just tell your friends no.
Yeah.
And it's that easy to wait until you're at least of age.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not that difficult if you surround yourself with the perfect people. I was recently told that you will become the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I feel like that's a perfect perspective, and especially with that kind of clause in the social ordinance, is crazy.
No, and what you just mentioned is something that is very true, and we see it very much in the not only the criminal side but the child protection side of things. Is a lot of people's behavior is going to be affected by who they associate with. So yeah, if you associate with people who make good decisions and kind of police themselves, or have parents who kind of police them a little bit, generally you're going to avoid a lot of mishaps. On the other hand, you associate with a lot of people who don't mind engaging in activities that they probably shouldn't. It's going to become habitual, and they're going to just absorb, what's going around them. So it's very much what you said is very, very true. And I didn't want to imply that you're bringing beers to your buddy's house.
I know. I'm using it as an example, of course. So you stated that there is a misdemeanor for those who are in violation of the social host ordinance. What does that entail for both the host and also the minor who's in jeopardy? So
there would be probably two different citations that would be issued. The host would be in violation of the social host ordinance. The minor would probably receive a minor in possession or a minor consumption ticket. That's also a misdemeanor. Generally, misdemeanors, they're the lowest level crime, and I say lowest level crime because petty misdemeanors are actually defined as non-criminal. So a misdemeanor is defined as a penalty that carries up to $1,000 fine or possibly 90 days in jail. Now, do we look to put people in jail for 90 days for a social host ordinance? No. And in fact, luckily my office manager actually found a social host ordinance violation that we prosecuted, and that person got no jail. Basically what that person got was they got put on probation for a year and were assessed a fine and basically told, don't do this again. If they were to do it again, that 0 days of jail might turn into a couple days of jail, and that $100 fine might increase. So the first time, that you violate it, you're probably going to get kind of a slap on the wrist, a financial penalty that hopefully disincentivizes someone. But if there were repeat offenders, then the penalties kind of go up.
Yeah, so more of that rehabilitative kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
Slowly bringing you, back to the right track, slowly increasing if you keep doing the bad things. Mom always said if you're grounded for 2 weeks, next time's 3. So how has the community's response been so far to this social host ordinance since it was passed in 2018?
That is something I can't quite say. I know there was support from the county board when it was passed. Like I said, it's something that kind of reflected what was already in state law and expanded upon it a little bit. I would imagine that if you were to gauge, the opinion of people in the community, that they would generally be supportive of it. Like I said, it's not something where we've got officers patrolling around trying to, look in people's garages, seeing who's, what teenager might be drinking a beer. Yeah. We're not doing that. So it's something where, if it's coming to the attention of law enforcement, there's probably some other egregious behavior that's going on that got, led to a 911 call or something. Yeah. So, I think in those cases, the vast majority of people have no problem citing someone who's, letting probably a drunk teenager do whatever on
and it's probably pretty obvious, like fireworks, in a lake or something.
Yeah.
Roman candles on a boat. Something no good like that. So why do you think originally, I wasn't sure, I'm not sure about how long it was fought for, but why do you think such an ordinance should be put into place in our county?
I think it's something that our ordinance, we kind of borrowed from Truman. Truman had something that was kind of the basis of ours. I don't know. I would have to ask my predecessor, what all led up to it. But I think it's just one of those things where, obviously state law covers a great, most of the conduct that you can think of that we want to penalize, disincentivize, you name it. But obviously there's a lot of stuff that where localities can kind of fill in gaps or provide a little bit more expansive, policing of certain things. This was one of those. Like I said, it goes a little bit farther than state law. So I think it's just one of those types of ordinances that just seem to be kind of natural for a county to adopt. So I'd imagine that was kind of why Martin County did decide to adopt it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory of a social host ordinance, really.
Yeah.
I mean, so what challenges have Martin County faced when enforcing the social host ordinance, and how have they been addressed? I know you guys can't be, like you said, peeping into the garages, making sure whip out some ID right now, kind of stuff.
No, and that's really kind of the challenge of it, and that's something that my predecessor noted at the board meeting when they adopted it, is that to prosecute someone, you need the police to kind of do some legwork to, you got to ask the person who is running the house, like, what did you know? What did you furnish? You got to kind of prove that connection between them and the minor using the alcohol. Which, sometimes people aren't the most truthful when they get arrested.
Especially did you know they were drinking alcohol at this event? Well, they're just going to lie. It's hard to...
Yeah. And especially, too, it might be like in that kind of example where I roped you into. If you bring a beer and you drink and, they might see you for a split second or something, they might really in the back of their head know. But, are you going to get them to admit that and say, I'm really aware of that? Probably not,
But can you share any of those success stories, like you mentioned before, where the person was caught and, they had to pay the fine or whatever the penalty was? Could you mention any other success stories where this social host ordinance succeeded?
Like I said, I was only able to find, one case where previously we'd actually prosecuted, but I can say that person didn't have another violation. So that's always kind of the plus.
That's a success story.
Yeah,
right
exactly. If you see someone commit a crime, always the hope is they don't do it again, and if they don't, it's kind of a win. So that's really, because generally I think, the probationary terms, when they get put on unsupervised probation, what that means is that they don't have a probation officer or anything like that. It's just basically, keep your nose clean for a year. So the thing is that if they don't have any other encounters with law enforcement for similar things, generally they've completed probation successfully. So, if you see someone, they get put on that probation and you don't see any further police contacts, again, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. To your knowledge, are there any plans to enhance or expand this social host ordinance?
No, I don't think so. Like I mentioned, it's probably, the way it is. Certainly we have enforced it, but it is tricky to really police it in full. And in all honesty, the real enforcement mechanism with social host and underage drinking is really not so much on the criminal side, but on the civil side. So meaning instead of criminal penalties, potential civil liability, meaning damages should anything happen. So under Minnesota law, there is a social host liability statute, which basically says that if anyone basically hosts an event in which someone under the age of 21 becomes intoxicated, and that intoxicated person then goes and injures someone else, the social host is liable for those.
Are there any initiatives, to pipeline into further youth abstinence and to protect the youth in the community that you know of?
Not something that's kind of comprehensive. Generally, we do have different kind of mechanisms available depending on, kind of how we get referred juveniles who have engaged in substance use, which, generally leads to citations like being a minor in possession or possibly driving, while intoxicated, or, I actually have had a 16, 17-year-old who got a DWI.
Really?
Yes, which is actually prosecuted as an adult matter. So, when that's kind of how juveniles come into the system, and it's reactive, but it is something where what we do is kind of, again, attentive to their particular needs given their age. So, if a juvenile might be cited for a minor in possession, probation has it set up where they will generally try to get the juvenile into a diversion program, meaning that the citation kind of goes away, but as long as they do like alcohol counseling or something like that. So, yeah, as far as being, like I said, being proactive, having programming where, we kind of try to go out and address issues before they arise. Can't say that we really have that, at least not, from my office or from I'm not sure exactly if law enforcement does anything, but as far as, once the cases come to us, we try to, like I said, we focus on that rehabilitative aspect with juveniles. So again, take alcohol classes, whatever types of substance use counseling, and again, try to kind of educate them to, hey, you made a stupid decision, don't do it again.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the Youth and Empower could spread more information about this whole social host ordinance, and also just alcohol abuse in general, and what the benefits are to abstaining until you're of age?
I think probably, and again, I hate to use kind of scare tactics, but oftentimes that's what works. But the thing is if you go to your buddy's house and you have a rager, and somehow the parents know about it, and God forbid an accident happens, those parents are probably going to be on the hook for a significant amount of money. Like I said, it's really the civil side that is the real kind of kicker for disincentivizing this. And certainly, too, even though a misdemeanor is not the most serious thing, a lot of people don't like to have that on their record. So it's really about risk mitigation. Avoid making stupid mistakes that are gonna, lead to bad results that are gonna follow you, whether it be financially or a blemish on your record. Those are real considerations, and everyone sort of poo-poos them until the stuff hits the fan, and then suddenly it's like, oh, why didn't I make a better decision? Well, making a better decision happens before the trouble starts.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, say if someone were to go in and try to get this huge job or promotion, post getting this misdemeanor, do you think that it really matters to employers?
Well, luckily, if you with the juvenile record, I should say that. I mean, generally the social host ordinance is going to apply to adults. It definitely depends on the job. The more, a lot of blue collar jobs, it might not really be that big of an issue, but certainly I think more professional jobs is going to maybe raise some eyebrows. And certainly if you want to get into certain fields, your record is going to be scrutinized a little bit more. If you work in the health industry, or you work with vulnerable adults, or anything that has specific licensing, then your record, definitely people pour through it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. And every year we do this event called the Sticker Shock. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not.
So last year we went to a few liquor stores in like our side of Martin County, for Martin County West, and we just hung a bunch of tags on bottles of alcohol, informing people about the social host ordinance, and that the giving alcohol to a minor that's not within your residence is illegal. So I believe that's probably the best event we can come up with. But do you have any ideas for us past that?
Trying to think. I don't think anything like that creative.
I know, it's a great event. I was really impressed whenever I first did it.
Yeah. I'm thinking too, when I think of Sticker Shock too, and one reason to maybe disincentivize people from drinking, or at least too much, is the actual price of alcohol. If you make it a habit, I mean, it takes a lot of money to feed that habit.
Yeah. I think mentioning those scare tactics especially, like gives me some ideas, like more posters outside letting them know, like, here's the steps to, our social host ordinance. The first one, it's an X amount of money. Do you really want to pay that much? How much is that really worth it? And
No, yeah, and it is something where, like I said, for the under 21-year-olds, I mean, you might be putting your parents at financial risk. For the parents, it's like you might not realize your kid, if your kids do something stupid, or your kids' friends do something stupid, that you might be facing a lawsuit. Because again, it's not just intoxicated kids going and getting into car accidents or something. I mean, if you got two kids who've been drinking alcohol and they get into a fist fight and one busts the other kid's nose, that's also due to you could say that's due to intoxication. There's somebody in the household that knew about it. Suddenly they might get a summons and complaint.
And going back to that civil liability, like if this kid's parents, who got a busted eyeball or busted lip, this kid's parents didn't know that he was drinking at this house. That just goes back to more and more civil liability.
Yeah, and and the civil liability, medical costs are going to be a lot more than the $100 fine that you're going to pay, from a citation, and that will be a wake up call.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Getting down to our last few questions here, but how does the Martin County government gather feedback from the community regarding the social host ordinance?
Generally, any feedback for any ordinance or any county action is normally directed to the individual commissioners. For their district. So, I mean, you live in the western part of the county, I'm guessing?
Yep.
So, your commissioner is probably Richard Coons.
Mm-hmm.
So, generally, if anyone has an opinion about something, you reach out to your commissioner, and then we have a very direct kind of line of input for county government. Like any locality of our size, it's pretty easy to get a hold of your local representative. And generally that's how stuff gets to the whole board is, reaching out to one commissioner and they share something with their colleagues or bring it up at a meeting. And
yeah, that's actually great because since we do have such a tight-knit community, our county is only 30,000. So, and I know Richard Coons personally. I go to his sons are in my class, so it's really nice to know that if I have any feedback or general things I would like to know about, I'd have that that connection. Is there a mechanism for community members to provide input or suggestions for the improvement beyond like the county commissioner?
Well, generally, I mean, for something like ordinances, those require public comment. So, you can come to, if there is an amendment to an ordinance or a new ordinance is being proposed, there is a public comment period where people can come to the board hearings and just, express their thoughts on it. That's probably the most, direct way where you get kind of the whole board to hear you out. But, I would say either the engagement with the individual board members, or like I said, we have board hearings 2 times a month. Great way to if you want to address something, you can be asked to be put on the agenda, and you could address the whole board that way. Like I mentioned, just with our size and everything, it's pretty easy to get that direct link to your local representative.
Yeah, once again, it just feels really nice to know that my voice does matter, and I have those outlets to share my opinion, and if I really have something. Mm-hmm. In conclusion here, what key messages or advice would you like to share with our listeners about the social host ordinance and the broader issue of substance misuse prevention in Martin County?
Well, what we're really trying to prevent is, again, from the ragers and kids getting absolutely sloshed, and then, like I said, and it's not just kids. Anyone gets overly intoxicated, the probability that they are going to do something damaging to themselves or others increases exponentially.
Yeah, like 1,000%.
Yeah, and that's doubly so when you're young and you haven't, your experience with alcohol is pretty fresh. It's a bad situation, and what we're trying to prevent or make sure doesn't happen is kind of those worst case scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. About the preventing abuse and just getting more information out to them. Absolutely. Do you have anything, other questions, comments, or concerns?
Not really. I mean, I think it's it's an interesting topic that, like I said, our social horse ordinance is not something that we see come up a lot, but definitely alcohol related crimes are something that my office deals with regularly. And I bet if you were to take a look at our repeat DWI offenders or our repeat offenders who are often found by the cops intoxicated, their drinking probably began at a pretty early age. And it probably got to be pretty heavy at an early age, I would guess. And so, we want people to be attentive of that because, it's hard to get sober when you're in your 30s, 40s. It's a lot easier to, dial back the drinking when you're in your teens.
All right, less serious question that I came up with myself. So are you a coffee drinker at all?
Actually, I am not.
You're not a coffee drinker?
No.
Tea?
Nope.
Any sort of soft drink? What's your favorite soft drink?
Soft drink? Right now, Mountain Dew Spark.
Ooh. See, I'm more of a classic Code Red kind of Mountain Dew drinker.
I haven't had a Code Red in a long time.
Ooh, or Baja Blast from Taco Bell.
Baja Blast is pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to have to pick up one myself. Well, that wraps up for another episode of Coffee and Clarity. A big thank you to our guest, once again, the Martin County Attorney, Taylor McGowan, for shedding light on our crucial topic of youth safety and the social host ordinance. Remember, awareness and understanding are key in fostering a safer community for our youth. Tune in for our next episode in May, where we are joined by peer recovery specialist Cole Sharp and motivational speaker / prevention coordinator and really awesome dude, Nathan Ray. This episode is titled Breaking the Cycle, a spotlight on prevention and recovery. Join us as we explore inspiring stories, effective prevention strategies, and the journey toward recovery. Mark your calendars. We will catch you on May 18th for another impactful episode of Coffee and Clarity. Thank you.